Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:05 on LBC. Well, over the last week, we've experienced these various protests by Insulate Britain on the M25, trying to close the motorway at various junctions for several hours at a time. The police just seem to stand there and do nothing. And in a way, it's been a very successful protest. I think it's A, been a successful protest in one way, and B, been a very unsuccessful protest in another. Because I'll come with the successful bit before. If you can close a motorway with like 10 people, that's quite easy to do, it seems, and that it's happening at various junctions, and there seems to be very rarely more than 20 people there. It's not one of these protests where there's hundreds or even thousands of people. They do it literally with 10 or 15 people. So from that point of view, it's been quite successful. But I would say that any protest, part of the aim surely has to be to get people on your side. You want to alert politicians to your point of view, but you also want to get the public on your side, because any successful campaign, doesn't really matter what area it's in, whether it's climate change or anything else, you need to build a coalition of people, or build a coalition of hearts and minds. And really, I'm not sure that this has done that. In fact, I think it's been quite the reverse in some ways, where people have been turned off. We've seen the altercations between protesters and members of the public who can't get to where they want to go. Now, it's an inconvenience not to get to where you want to go in the time available. I had a narrow escape on Friday when I was being driven back to my home from Good Morning Britain, and I had to be in Eastbourne to do a speech at lunchtime on Friday, and I just about managed to get round the M25 before they started. So I was quite grateful for that. Now, it would have been an inconvenience for me not to get to this engagement, but if there'd been a medical emergency, that would have been something different. And we have had definite stories of people who have been inconvenienced in that way, and we'll hear about one of those in just a moment. Now, They sent a letter, Insulate Britain, to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, today. It started with these words: We wish to profoundly apologise for the disruption we've caused over the past week on the M25. We cannot imagine undertaking such acts in normal circumstances. But like you and other Conservatives, we believe that the reality of our situation has to be faced. And then they talk about the reasons as to why they're doing it. I mean, it's a very friendly, polite letter. They say, we plead with you to demonstrate leadership. Ask the Prime Minister to make the statement the country wants to hear, that the government will live up to its responsibilities to protect us, and so it goes on. And then they say, at the end of this press release, Insulate Britain is asking the government to release a meaningful public statement to insulate the housing stock of the UK by 9 p.m. tonight. That's issue a statement, not to actually insulate the housing stock by 9 p.m. tonight. That would be very unreasonable. And disruption to the M25 network will cease. So my question to you is, what should the government's response be? As far as I understand it, they haven't issued a response by the 9 o'clock deadline. What do you think the government should say to Insulate Britain? 0345 6060 973. And is this a protest where you think I'm wrong, that actually it has benefited the campaign against climate change? It's made you sit up and take notice, particularly of the home insulation issue. Maybe from that point of view, you think it has been a success. 0345 6060 973. Well, let's get more of the background on this from LBC's correspondent Rachel Venables.
Well, on the fourth day of their disruptive actions and just over a week since they started, today the climate campaigners Insulate Britain released a letter to the Home Secretary Priti Patel, profoundly apologising for the disruption, but also asking the government to, they say, release a meaningful public statement of intent to insulate the housing stock of the UK. They want that statement by 9 o'clock tonight, and if that happens, they promise to end the disruption they're causing to the M25 network. Now, I'll leave you to make up your own mind as to whether or not the government will bow to that sort of pressure, particularly given the fact that Priti Patel's reaction to them last week was to urge the police to be even stronger against the group, accusing them of guerrilla tactics. Well, this afternoon, the Prime Minister himself has weighed in, speaking to reporters on a flight to New York. He said he thought the group weren't doing any favours to their cause. All the while on the ground, frustration with them just keeps on growing. Have a listen to this exchange between a driver and Insulate Britain campaigners after they blocked him and hundreds more on the exit slip road of junction 18 for Chorleywood in Hertfordshire this morning.
I know what your fight is. I completely agree that this is a really, really good idea. But this is not the way to do it. You're causing more pollution by all of these cars just sitting here doing all. This is ridiculous. You're doing this over and over again. You're not helping your cause. You're making people hate you. Go down to Downing Street. Don't sit.
This is affecting the economy. That's the only thing that the government understands.
Now, of course, we've heard some terrible stories from people stuck in traffic, but after reflecting on a caller who told LBC his mother was left paralysed by a stroke because of the queues, which meant he couldn't get her to a hospital quick enough, this morning Nick Ferrari had this clash with spokesman Liam Norton.
Well, it isn't about justification, Nick. It's about acknowledging the situation that we're in. And what we're saying to you, Nick, I spoke to you last week, and I told you about what we do in the next 3 to 4 years will determine the future of humanity. And you came back at me with a story about diesel cars, and it sounds like you can't emotionally connect with the truth.
Don't talk to me about emotionally. Don't lecture me about emotional connection, Mr. Norton. You've just heard a caller explain how he watched his mother effectively drain away in front of his house for 6 hours. Don't lecture me on emotional content, OK? Let's get that straight.
And I'm talking to you about the suffering of millions of people.
And I'm talking to you about the suffering of Chris's mother, which you brought about with your colleagues, OK?
Yeah.
Now, the fact that people are suffering is hideous, but that is on such a global scale. It impinges on the governments of China, India, the United Kingdom, Australia, everything. That woman effectively dying in front of her son's eyes is down to you and your colleagues. So when are you going to suddenly stop with these lame apologies and actually accept that this is not the way to protest? Mr. Norton.
It's awful, Nick, isn't it? That we have to...
I've had enough. It's not awful. What's awful is climate change, of course. What's awful is that someone has virtually died because of your actions. That's what's awful.
In total, we know of 41 arrests today as the group targeted 2 spots in Hertfordshire, one on the M25, the other on the A1M. And they also tried to blockade the M25 down in Kent as well. But there, the police managed to get in the way before they made it onto the road. Hertfordshire police have called the protests dangerous. They say they've been monitoring key spots on the road network where they expect the group to emerge next.
Rachel Venables reporting. Let's have a word with Tracey Mallaghan, who's a spokesperson for Insulate Britain. Tracey, very good evening.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Hi. Now, you heard my colleague Nick Ferrari there get very irate with one of your colleagues. Do you understand why he was so angry?
I actually heard it live this morning as well, and I was I understand everybody's anger. It's misplaced outrage in many ways. What Liam was trying to say was very, very distressed about this one person, but we're talking about thousands, millions, perhaps a complete collapse of our economy, our NHS. Everything we hold dear is on the line here. And it's a horrible dilemma to be in. And I'm sending Chris my love, which I'm sure he doesn't want. But we have to think of the bigger picture.
But the problem is that, I don't know if you heard my comments at the beginning where I said, I used to be a lobbyist. I used to have to try and persuade governments to do things or not do things. Mm-hmm. And my tactic was always to try and build a coalition of support, get the public on side. And I'm just worried that from your point of view, that your tactics are counterproductive. Yes, you've had a success in bringing the M25 to a halt on various occasions, using very few people. So, I mean, hats off to you for that in a sense. But I can't think of anybody who's at the end of these protests is going to say, well, that persuaded me to change my mind. I now support this movement, whereas I didn't before. I think you've actually put people off.
Well, the YouGov poll that was done on this said actually a third of people agree that this level of disruption is now necessary after everything we've been trying for decades. And actually, Ian, there's over 80 people going out every day, and our numbers are growing. People are signing up to the campaign and interested in doing the training that will allow them to take part.
So you're basically not going to give up on this. You're going to continue this for as long as it takes, it sounds.
My children's future is at stake. Everything I hold dear is at stake. I am terrified that we'll have a revolting revolt, that if we don't get on with planning for the many crises we face, then we'll have worse than running out of toilet roll shortages. You know, when the food starts running out, we're going to have worse. There's much work ahead.
But what do these protests achieve in telling us something that we didn't know that we know now that we didn't before. We know that climate change is a serious problem. The government knows that climate change is a serious problem. I completely accept that you want to persuade the government to do more, but when you look at what they have done, it's more than most countries. We have cut our carbon emissions by more than any other country in Europe apart from Sweden. Now, that surely is something that you should welcome. You might say, well, there's still a lot more to be done, and you'd be right on that. But in the end, there has to be some sort of balance, because you're not going to get the government to accept that they have got to pay for however many homes we have in this country to be insulated. It's just not going to happen. And to issue ridiculous deadlines like 9 o'clock this evening, what on earth were you thinking?
Well, it's the same message from Monday. They've had over a week, haven't they? And, I'm really surprised, Ian. You had the privilege of being the first man to run as an openly gay candidate, and the struggle that went. You'd have been locked up and put in prison at one point of your life if you'd have been born then. Protesters are not popular at the time of the protest. We know this, and disruption is what's got us on the news every day this week. I wish there'd be a different way of doing it. We've all tried many, many ways, but David King has said the next 3 to 4 years will determine the future of mankind. That's heavy. Do you feel that? You must be worried as well. Are you worried about what we're running into?
Well, I come from a point of view where I took some persuading that that climate change was mostly man-made. I have gone on a little bit of a journey over the last 10 or 15 years on that. I'll freely admit.
Sweetheart,
I'll freely admit that. But I think you have to root your politics in the art of the possible. And I don't think that it is possible to insulate 22 million homes at no cost to the homeowner. And that's effectively what, as I understand it, you're suggesting the government should do. Now, OK, some homes will be fully insulated anyway, so you can take a few million off that. And we know, you presumably know what's happened in Australia when they instituted the kind of scheme that I think you would like, and it collapsed within months for all sorts of different reasons. So if we stay in the art of the possible, what would you accept? What do you think is realistic?
So we have the construction, many members of the construction industry, architects on board with this campaign, and they're leading it. They are raring to go. They want to get on with the job. What is lacking is the will. We don't lack the solutions. We have every ability to look this crisis in the face, get brave, get strong, get on the same page together and do it. I really believe in a British spirit and community. What is lacking is the will. And you're a lovely journalist, but some of them, what's lacking is the media pulling us all together and saying, we need Boris to come out and say, we're sorry, we may have misread some things. We are in an absolute crisis, but thank God for the British spirit, because we're going to pull together and do it.
But he has been saying that. If you look at even today when he's chairing this climate change group at the United Nations, he has been using the kind of language that I think you would probably approve of, but gets no credit whatsoever from anyone in the environmental movement.
Because he's not backing it up with actions, Ian. It's just not being backed up with real action.
Well, you say that, but I'm still not hearing a definite plan from you. You're saying, well, we want all homes to be insulated, but how do you actually achieve that? Because I'm not sure any other country. Can you name a country that has done what you want to do? Where's the technology that will make sure that if we did it, we'll do it a damn sight better than the Australians managed to do, where they instituted the kind of scheme you want very, very quickly. And because they did it quickly, the people that were supposed to be insulating the homes didn't have the proper training. And I think I'm right in saying there were at least 6 deaths that resulted from it. Now, you wouldn't want to go down that road. I certainly don't want to go down that road. There has to be a feasible plan. And you haven't come up with that yet as a group.
There is. They have. Because people from the construction industry, architects, lots of people with far more experience of what is actually needed have come up with a plan. They are raring to go. They want to get on with this.
Yeah, they did. And that's exactly what happened in Australia. All the people that thought that they could make a quick profit out of it, they came up with plans and they didn't work.
Well, I've met some of these construction people and the architects, and I believe that they do know exactly what they're doing and exactly what is needed. We're just hearing delaying tactics. And what I'm hearing is you want me to go home to my children and say, I'm sorry, kids, this is all too big. We're not even going to have a go at saving your future. And there's no way I'm going home to look my children in the eye and say this problem's too big, we're not going to have a go at it. And this is the easiest of all the problems we've got to fix, right?
Well, I don't know if it is the easiest, but and I wouldn't expect you to do that. Look, I can hear that you are you feel absolutely genuinely about this. I can hear it in your voice. I'm not accusing you of being anything other than completely genuine about this. And I don't say that to all people who engage in some of these protests, because we all know that some protests can be taken over by people who don't have the best interests of the particular movement at heart. I don't accuse you of that at all, and I can tell that you are genuine. But I still think that it's pointless making unrealistic demands on a government that they can't possibly agree to. And if you set unrealistic deadlines, again, it diminishes the rightness of your case.
I do hear what you're saying. I'd love for you to have one of our experts in this field on and do some more in-depth talking about just what is needed, because you're right, it's huge, right? I'm fully aware. I'm not asking for simple things, but this is not just a one-issue protest. The reality of the situation we face is we've got 3 to 4 years to determine the future of humankind. It's weighty, it's heavy, and we've got to get on with things. So I'd love for you to have some of our experts on and maybe do a longer segment about what's really needed, and how we can do it.
I've had lots of texts and tweets coming in while we've been talking, as you can imagine, some completely supporting you, others not. Lazarus says, evening, Ian, how could you allow this woman from Insulate to talk about gay people's struggle? Gays never got people killed in their quest for recognition. These Insulate people are literally killing people with their tactics. They're very arrogant and not sorry at all. There is some truth in that, and I don't want to exaggerate. That there have been people who have experienced problems getting emergency medicines to their families. There was obviously the incident that Nick Ferrari talked about this morning, but you seem to be completely unrepentant about that.
Oh no, but I feel, emotionally, I'm certainly connecting with it. I really wish that there was a different way, and gay rights activists, they were fighting for their lives during the AIDS campaign, right? They were throwing the ashes of their dead loved ones over the gates of the White House to say, please, please, can we stop this insanity? And please, can the government meet their legal duty of protecting us? And,
I think possibly your movement could learn a lot from the way that movement operated. But listen, we've gone way over the time that I was meaning to spend with you, Tracey. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.